because China's just so far ahead of us, in a lot of these technologies. But
hello everyone and welcome back to Globe Anew. Wait a minute, you see this? I have a new outfit now. Look at how neat this is. Today I'm joined by Joyce Yang, a young researcher at the Brookings Institution whose work sits right at the intersection of youth and international policy. She's also a Georgetown graduate and someone who has quickly built an exciting career in policy research. So let's dive in. Hi Joyce, it's great to see you. Thanks for hopping on the call. Today we're going to be talking about you and your experience at Brookings Institution as a research assistant. So let's start from the beginning. When did you realize that international policies are calling, and what first inspired you to pursue a career in policy and research at Brookings?
I grew up in the DC area, so I've always kind of been surrounded by policy. And in college, I kind of leaned more into tech policy. So I started off kind of how China was using surveillance, both within the country and also kind of exporting it to other countries. And I was lucky enough to get a Fulbright fellowship to teach English in Taiwan, do more research and find a job where I could always be learning and researching. And I applied to a bunch of think tanks and got into Brookings, which was great.
And you're still a young person, so I'd like to ask, as a young person in such a major institution like Brookings, what has the journey been like? I mean, we know that you studied at Georgetown University, and maybe we can hear more about your experience there too.
Coming into such a large institution as kind of an entry-level position, a young person, I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome that I felt, like arriving there and everyone knows so much about every single topic out there, everything about the world. So I think that was definitely like a learning curve, like finding my own confidence and, knowing that I deserve to like have a seat at the table too. And like young people, we have things to contribute to. A lot of finding that confidence in myself was leaning on, a lot of the skills that I gained through all these different experiences, especially I think from Georgetown, from college, the connections that I made at Georgetown through the professors or, a lot of being in DC, there's just a lot of important people who pass through campus. Those all kind of culminated and helped me a lot in my job today.
What would you rate your experience during Georgetown out of 10 maybe?
My first year, I was like, I don't want to be here. But by the last year, I like really loved it. Out of 10, I would say like 8.
After your education, it led you to a lot of different steps, and now you work at Brookings. So I guess what excites you most about your job? What gets you up in the morning? And maybe you can share some of the projects that you've worked on here and what sorts of people you work with to complete them.
I think one thing I really appreciate about my job is that I feel like I'm constantly learning. Like every day I'm learning something new. We have a lot of really great scholars in our program, and I work closely with Ryan Haas and Patricia Kim, which has been really great. I think before working there, they were kind of like celebrities to me, and now I see them every day, and they're, everyone I interact with is so smart and so, like scholarly, but they're also just very kind people, and I think that has made a big difference in my experience so far. I think not just the scholars, but also the junior staff that I'm surrounded by have made a big impact on my experience as well. Everyone has so many ideas and they're constantly, we have lunches a lot of the times, and that's where I feel like I get a lot of my new ideas, just bouncing ideas off of each other and learning about different parts of the world because we're all in different centers. And so I feel like I've learned so much more about the Middle East or, the energy situation in like Russia than I would have before just through talking to people. I think there's 2 big projects that stand out to me. Was this big project, it was kind of under the title of the future of US-China policy. It was basically the project that I was brought on to help coordinate. And it was essentially bringing different scholars together to provide recommendations for the incoming administration. At that point, we didn't know who it was going to be. And so it changed a lot, over the months that the project was running. But the general idea of it was We typically think of China as this all-encompassing competitor, challenger to US interests, but the goal of the project was to look closer at, in more granular detail, what are the specific interests the US has and wants to protect, and, how can we break those big nebulous issues down into actionable policy. So yeah, I think that was a really great primer into working for the organization, because what I appreciate about Brookings is that, people are really thoughtful about the things that they do. I think especially recently in DC, a lot of policy, especially policy towards China, can be very politics or almost emotions driven, rather than evidence-based, fact-driven. So it was really refreshing, honestly, to be working with all these different experts who, were really specific and really cared about the facts and how we could not just fall into fear-mongering, I guess.
Sounds like such a great environment to be in. I guess just being surrounded by so many critical thinkers all the time, and just having a lot of people that are more or less experts in their own interests. That just sounds like a super fun time, honestly.
Yeah, no, it is really great. And there's always a lot of, big projects going on. The second one I'll quickly end on is just, we also have a track 2 dialogue on artificial intelligence and national security, and that's been a really cool project to witness, just because I gotten to travel also for work, which has been fun. But it's also demonstrated a lot of how we can work directly with scholars in China to get better understandings of how each side sees things, very complex issues such as artificial intelligence, AGI, things like that.
Yeah, not surprised that artificial intelligence is a hot topic right now, especially with in July, both the US and China have their new AI plans, and they unveiled it for the world to see. It's definitely pretty polarizing right now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, it's a huge issue, and I also think it's kind of just the big thing, you put AI on anything and it's we'll get a lot of traction. So
I live in the Bay Area right now, and it's just AI talk every single day. You never get enough of it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
From your perspective, what policy issues are the most urgent for us right now?
Definitely one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, obviously, very obvious answer is climate change, but specifically what steps we can take to address that. I think this whole clean energy transition, that's going to be a huge topic, and something I'm more and more interested in, especially in the US-China space, because China's just so far ahead of us, in a lot of these technologies. But this issue is a huge one that we're going to, the whole world will need to cooperate. It's not something that can be only dealt with, by certain countries. I also think this is more abstract maybe, but I think in the policy world, just in general, there's a bigger and bigger issue where I feel people aren't listening to each other, if that even, with social media, with this information environment, there's just so many different directions. People are pulled in a million directions all the time, and there's polarization, but it's also, I think, there's fewer and fewer opportunities for people in different places, in different classes, anything, to really listen to each other. And I think that has a huge impact on policy and what gets made. Yeah, I think that's a big thing for DC too, right? More and more DC feels very separated from the rest of the country, and I think that's a big issue. Yeah.
So unfortunate that it has to be this way.
Yeah.
As a young researcher, what does a typical day at Brookings look like for you? And what does the most stressful day look like for you?
My job is a mix of research support for our scholars as well as logistics and event planning, which I think is often a good balance. Some work really requires a lot of thinking, and some work just requires a lot of you just gotta work at it, no brain work is what I call it. Yeah, so usually I'm either working on kind of a longer term research memo for one of our scholars. So for example, ones I've helped with before are on how Chinese high-level leaders are understanding the Trump administration. And so kind of going into like finding primary sources, different things to really get at the heart of that research. And then events are a huge part of our work. And so I think take much more work. There's so many steps that go into putting together an event. And I think it's work that's not as glamorous, but I actually get the most out of, having different people come to speak. A lot of times we have high-level people like Ambassador Nick Burns. We'll also have a lot of book talks. So it's just cool to be in the room with a lot of these preeminent China scholars.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, it sounds like you do a little bit of everything in your work.
Yeah. I think that kind of ties into the most stressful days is sometimes it is hard to kind of switch gears. And if you have, a longer term project and also, we have 2 events in the same day, that's just what's difficult is like working with my team to figure out, making sure that everyone can do the tests and not get burnt out, at the same time. So,
I mean, would you say that you have a lot of deadlines on your mind when you're doing work? Because I know that during high school, during college, during a lot of academia work, it's often just deadlines and deadlines. You can never really escape it. Would you say that's still true for your career right now?
Yes, I think that is, but it's way more manageable in my opinion than high school or college. I look back at a lot of things I was, my schedule in high school and I was like, I could never do that today. And I'm sure for you, you have like a million activities going on. It's only getting more stressful, I feel like. But yeah, I think work life is definitely more manageable. Like once it's 5 or 6, I'm done with work and I don't have to think about it. So
okay, so there's no more days where it's 11 p.m. and you're still up grinding an essay or something.
Yeah, thank goodness.
That's great to hear. I mean, this isn't a question on the list. It might be a little bit too personal, just let me know. But what were you up to in high school?
I did a lot of cross country. I was running every day after school, like for 2 hours, which is like actually mind-blowing to me because I could not do that now after a whole day of school. I also did some art magazines with my school. I did Model UN, but I honestly wasn't very serious about it, as serious as I should have been. So I think there's a lot of things that, looking back, I wasn't the model student or anything, but it took like going to college and then all these other experiences to like really help me figure out, what I was doing, whether what I was doing was for myself and like what I was interested in, or, something that I was doing because everyone else was doing it or because it looked good, I think that's just the process of like being a young person and figuring yourself out. That was the biggest thing that stuck out to me when remembering high school.
It works. I think it's what a lot of us need to hear right now. I mean, look at where you are right now in your career. It's incredible, and it shows us that we don't need to do every single thing 100 billion% just to get where we want to go.
Yes. It'll all work out.
Looking at US-China policy today, what trends capture your attention right now?
Really on my mind recently is this, how we can cooperate, or in what areas, we can cooperate on clean energy, and what ways the US can use technology, the clean energy technology from China within national security bounds. I think that's a huge question. I've really been following this whole export control things on chips. I think that's going to be a huge question that will not end with this administration or the future one. Just figuring out what we want the bounds to be on trade, like understanding innovation and whether you can stop it just by putting export controls there. That's a big one. And then another big area that I think is super important is just on, this big question of student visas, immigration, We're seeing huge changes in the ability for Chinese students to come to the US to study. And I think that has a huge bearing on US-China relations, on people-to-people connections, because I think that's kind of the foundation of, these national relationships. But it also has a huge impact on the ability for the US to have the technological expertise that it needs to, do well in this strategic competition on technology. So, I think there's a lot of ways in which we may be veering off of where we need to be in order to stay competitive.
Yeah, these are all such big trends right now, right? And super big issues that we can be looking at right now. And I don't know, like for me, I have family that live in China and I have family that live in the US right now. So the worst case scenario for us right now is the US and China having a falling out of sorts. I'm not sure if that's the same with you as well.
Yeah. I have family members in China. My parents immigrated to the US from China. And so, it's been a huge part of, I think it's a huge part of US national identity to have welcome immigrants walk in. So, I feel like we're really taking a step backwards here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. What unique perspectives do younger researchers like yourself bring to analyzing global policy issues?
I think there's a lot of unique elements from our generation. I think the fact that we grew up with social media, honestly, and with access to so much more information, I think we have a different perspective on things in a lot of different ways. One is just this understanding of technology, and it keeps changing. And so sometimes I'll be working with our interns and I'm like, oh my God, I feel old. Like, I don't know the latest AI thing that everyone's using. But I think just knowledge of fundamental knowledge of technology is going to be a huge thing and something that you really have to understand and will intersect with any kind of policy going forward. And I also think that access to information that we've always had helps us, almost have a broader understanding of the world, if that makes sense. It's a very broad statement, so it really depends. But I think there is just, you get more perspectives and we just have so much more access to news and media. That can be bad sometimes, but overall, I think it's a positive. And I also think it's just, I've noticed in young people and people I work with, you just have a lot more energy, you want to change the world. And that mindset is something that we really need, especially in DC right now, that responsibility for the future, whether it be on knowing that things like climate change and emerging technologies are really going to impact our futures, but also feeling that initiative to really do something about it.
It's still a pretty high stakes environment that you're in, no matter how friendly. So do you ever feel pressure to censor yourself when your personal views don't align with the brand?
I think there's always a little bit of that, or not if my views don't align, but really critically thinking about what I should say and how it will come across, I guess. That's just a big thing in politics, I feel like. But I also do think that Brookings always talks about how they're a very independent organization. All views are representative of the scholars, of the staff themselves, and not of the broader institution. And so I think that has been really great because it allows everyone to express their own opinions, how they see things, instead of feeling like they have to adhere to the bigger ideals of the organization. And I have been in meetings where people, even in my center, people have different views on how we should approach China, how to even view China.
For students that want to do something similar, what would you say is something that they can do right now?
Sounds so simple, but I think that reading more, I think there's so much to be gained from kind of stepping outside of yourself, really understanding other perspectives, other cultures, that's something that I learned so much of living abroad. So I think that's also a huge piece of advice. I know it is difficult to do, but if you ever get the chance to study or work or live abroad, like even for a short amount of time, I think it's so worth it. But even short of that, I think just reading books, watching movies, whatever that looks like, some form of media where you can really engage with stories and different perspectives. You can do that in so many different ways. I'm currently reading Wildland by Evan Osnos. He's one of the non-resident scholars in our program. And I think a lot of his writing is just really good. He's been a journalist for a long time, so I think he's really good at writing from different perspectives. But this book kind of covers what are the factors that led to Trump's presidency, and he interviews people in different parts of the US. And I think it's just really interesting to see this like deep dive of US local politics. I really love Pachinko. That was a book that I was reading for a lot of the time when I was in Taiwan, and I really enjoyed it. I'm trying to think of a movie that I really love Amelie. It's like kind of a weird French movie, but fun. Yeah.
Would you recommend the students to read more leisure, just whatever books they find interesting, or just something in the direction that they like?
There's so many books like that where I just get halfway through and then, books that are kind of nonfiction but are very like narrative based or like interesting, it like feels like a story. And that's why I really love a lot of Evan's work. He has another one, The Age of Ambition, about his time in China, and that's how I originally was introduced to his work. But I found especially authors who were journalists or are journalists, they're really good at writing books that are like informative, but also, they're trained in holding your attention. So it's always interesting as well. So I think, yeah. And I also think you can learn so much from fiction. Like we often separate that, it's like not productive, but I feel like I've learned just as much from like historical fiction or things like that, where it might not be just facts, but you get a better understanding of a particular like time or place or culture.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for sharing your journey and insights with us today. It's really inspiring to hear how young people can shape international policy in real time. And to our listeners, make sure to follow Joyce's work at Brookings, and we'll have links to her in the description and on our website. Thanks for tuning in. Bye!